Today from the global lane, American troop pullout from Syria, consequences for the Kurds. We have first-hand reaction from Christians in northern Syria. Muslims vote in southern Philippines. Will years of bloodshed finally come to an end? Trump says the U.S. will never become socialist. Is he sure? Speakers on this American college campus praise Maduro and Venezuelan socialism. And I'll bring you the truth about the state of the American Union. And it's all right here, right now, from the global lane. Although President Trump has slowed the pullout of American troops from Syria, Kurdish Christians there fear disaster. They believe the pullout could lead to another genocide against Christians by Turkey. Our Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell traveled to northeast Syria to bring us this exclusive report.
Just a few years ago, ISIS left a scar on the land in the form of an historic genocide. Now Christians fear another potential apocalypse with enemies all around them. Turkey is the main concern.
After the threats of Erdogan to this region that he wants to take the place of the great force of America, we felt danger because of this void. If it was filled by the countries of this region or another power, there will be danger in general for the people, and especially the Christian people.
The reason many people in northeast Syria are afraid of Turkey is because of what happened last year in northwest Syria, the Turkish invasion of Afrin. In January 2018, its army, along with Islamic militias called the Free Syrian Army, began a military campaign to capture the city of Afrin. Charmaine Heading of the Shai Fund lays out the Turks' goals.
We know from what the statements that they've made that they want to get rid of the people in this area and bring in other people from Syria. So it's a population displacement.
To find out more about the Afrin campaign, we traveled here to the city of Kobani and this evangelical church. Last year, Christians fled Afrin during the Turkish operation to take over the city. Some came here to Kobani to find refuge, security, and a place to worship. Zani pastors this church. He and his wife Shinar fled Afrin.
Everything in the church has been stolen. It's the terrorists' very natural behavior, and they burned the church.
Islamic soldiers allied with Turkey killed her cousin's child.
There were a group of people with weapons that entered our neighborhood and they were stealing. So my cousin went out and asked them, "What are you doing?" So the man with weapons attacked my cousin's house and shot and killed his son.
Turkish President Erdogan has threatened a similar campaign into northeast Syria. When Shinar heard about President Trump's decision, she prayed.
Every day we cried and prayed to the Lord that we would not end up like Afrin.
President Trump's decision surprised them.
We love the American president a lot. I have said that he is a believer and that he prays. And so I was surprised. Why did President Trump do this? That he immediately wants to withdraw the forces from here. Is it possible that he was not considering the church, or that he doesn't know that there are believers here?
In all, there's about 100,000 Christians in northeast Syria, most fearful of genocide. President Trump slowed down his timetable to pull out U.S. troops. But for Christians here, they're hoping and praying for much more than that.
Chris Mitchell joins us now with more. First, Chris, I've got to ask you, President Trump has received a lot of criticism for saying ISIS has been defeated in Syria. He probably should have said the caliphate's been defeated. So what did the Kurds in northern Syria tell you? Are they still fighting ISIS there?
Well, they are, and that's a good distinction, Gary. The caliphate has been defeated, but ISIS has not. The ideology still remains. In fact, people were telling us there are ISIS sleeper cells in many of the cities and towns there in Syria. So that remains. They will probably morph into a more guerrilla kind of insurgency, you know, suicide attacks and things like that. But they have been defeated as a caliphate. In fact, maybe within the next few days, that caliphate will be completely eliminated.
And the Christians you met with in Kobani, that's truly amazing, Chris, because when I visited there 4 years ago, I couldn't find many Christians. Is this a new church?
It is a new church. In fact, we were told that the new self-administration government there allows the church, an evangelical church. They even allow, actually, people who have converted from Islam to Christianity. And as you were there 4 years ago, much of the destruction remains. We were in areas that were devastated by ISIS and some of the fighting going on. But it is a new thing to have an evangelical church, and we got to go to the worship service, a remarkable thing going on, and yet allowed to be the sort of a sign of the religious freedom there and that new self-administration in northeast Syria, which I think is one of the remarkable stories in the Middle East right now, Gary. But one of the main things that they're concerned about right now, Gary, and is the possibility that Turkey might monitor this 20-mile security zone all along the Turkish-Syrian border. They're really concerned about Turkey. That's probably the #1 threat that I heard over and over, whether it was military leaders, governmental leaders, or church people like that, the Church of the Brethren.
Well, what was your impression from visiting there with the Kurdish militias? How great is that threat from the Turkish army now that the U.S. is starting to withdraw? Are they overreacting a bit, Chris?
I really don't think so. They look to Afrin, which is a city in northwest Syria, as an example of what might happen. And last year, and really you would say the world was kind of silent on this, the Turkish army, along with the Free Syrian Army, was a lot of jihadists in that particular army. They took over Afrin. They have been displacing the population, over 300,000 according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. There's been looting, there's been kidnapping, there's been murders. We heard examples of that. So they're looking at that as an example of what could happen. And also, Gary, they also remember the 1915 Armenian genocide. Many of the people that settled in northeast Syria, their ancestors fled that Armenian genocide. So these two things, I think, are playing really deeply in their minds of what may happen if the U.S. does pull out.
Yeah, I know if that was one of my family members, I wouldn't forget that either from 1915. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Chris, before you go, I need to ask you about this historic trip of Pope Francis to the United Arab Emirates. Why is he doing it?
Well, I think it's a sign of a new openness in the Arabian Peninsula to Christianity. And not only Pope Francis is visiting there, that's historic, but also there was a historic visit of an evangelical delegation. We covered that here at CBN News, that visited and met with the Crown Prince of the UAE, United Arab Emirates. They met with the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. I think there's a new openness from Arabs and Muslims on the Arab Peninsula, and we'll see. This is one more sign of, I think, things to come, a greater openness toward Christianity and to having sort of the Pope come and actually maybe even churches being built on the Arabian Peninsula.
Well, you definitely saw that openness up in Kurdistan there in northern Syria. It'd be nice to see it on the more of it throughout the Arab world. Now, you've been to the UAE. About 1 million Christians are there, mostly expat workers. But former Muslims who become Christian are still facing persecution, Chris. Will the Pope's trip make a difference there? And, you know, some people say he's kind of naive about the true nature of Islam.
I think that may be an accurate description. He might be naive about Islam, and that would be the really barrier, I think, for many Muslims and Arabs, the willingness to accept actually a Muslim to convert from Islam to Christianity. As you say, there's a greater openness, religious freedom in the UAE, dozens of churches and many Christians there, but they sort of in a ghetto. They do worship in particular places. You won't see perhaps an open-air meeting, evangelistic meeting necessarily, but there is tolerance. And it's a step in the right direction. That's what many of the leaders in the delegation we were with said. This is not the United States, but they're going in the right direction in terms of tolerance of religious freedom. And we'll see, and perhaps we'll see that continue.
Well, positive things happening in the Middle East, and we need to keep praying, Chris.
First of all, pray for those Christians in Kobani, for their protection. And all the Christians there's about 100,000, many traditional Christians like the Syriac Christians and the Assyrians, a few evangelicals, but certainly pray for them. They're very concerned about what's going to happen, and continue to pray for that religious tolerance and openness on the Arabian Peninsula and throughout the Muslim world.
Okay, Chris Mitchell, CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief, just back from northern Syria. Thanks for your insights.
Great to be with you, Gary.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit cbn.com. The I wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Voters in the southern Philippines have just completed the final round of voting on a referendum that would grant autonomy to the Muslim region there. A new law known as the Bangsamoro Organic Law creates a Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. For years, the region has been a hotbed of Islamic liberation and terrorist movements, such as the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, Abu Sayyaf, and the Maute rebels who are affiliated with the Islamic State. Residents there, mostly Muslims, must ratify the law before it can take effect. And joining us with more from Cotabato, Mindanao, is CBN Asia reporter Lucille Toulouse. And Lucille, tell me what you witnessed. What was the mood of the people?
Generally, it was very peaceful, and the voters went to the polling places very early in the morning, but the turnout of voters is only 35 to 40%. And so I think that is a little low.
Why is it so low?
Well, perhaps because of the bombings, the major one in Jolo, and also there were pockets of violence in some of the towns, although these were not major bombings, but still, it created fear among the people.
Lucille, what will autonomy mean for the Philippines and the people of Mindanao? Will it stop these rebel movements and the violence there?
Once the law is in place, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF, will decommission firearms, about 12,000 firearms. And I think they have a total of 40,000 firearms. So many people here, Muslims and Christians, believe that it will work. Expanded autonomy gives more powers, greater powers to the Moros or to the Muslims. This new expanded autonomy will also address the injustices done against the Muslims, decades ago. And do you know that one of these is under the Treaty of Paris? The Spaniards way back sold the Philippines to the Americans, and without the knowledge of the sultanates.
Yes, it goes back many centuries, Lucille. So how about the Christians there? What are their concerns?
Well, the Christians are supportive of the government. They are supportive of the Bangsamoro Organic Law because this is supporting peace. And as one pastor said, the head of the pastors here in North Cotabato, he said that, as Christians, we want peace, and we are a peaceful people. It will have a parliamentary form of government. And so there will be representations from the Muslim group, from the Christians and from indigenous people. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF, will decommission firearms. About 12,000 firearms. Many people here, Muslims and Christians, believe that it will work, that the new expanded autonomy law will work.
Okay, Lucille, we'll be praying for peace in Mindanao. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, for being there in Cotabato, Philippines. God bless.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
A number of countries are pressing Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to hold new elections. In fact, some nations have already recognized opposition leader Juan Guaido as interim president. Venezuela is a socialist mess. The country's annual inflation rate is now 80,000%. In contrast, the inflation rate in the United States finished 2018 at 1.9%. Many Venezuelans are starving while drug traffickers and terrorists thrive. And you'd think this would be taught to young American adult minds on campus. But not so at California's all-female Scripps College. In the midst of the Venezuelan crisis, that institution of higher learning is continuing to host speakers that defend Maduro and socialism. Joining us to set it straight as campus reforms Emma Michelle. Emma, explain, please, what you found out about Scripps College.
Scripps College is hosting an event, or actually already hosted an event, called Venezuela is Irrevocably Free. And this is actually not the first event that they've held that's sympathetic to Maduro's dictatorship, his murderous regime. They've held 3 prior events last November that were similarly sympathetic to socialist Venezuela. And what they should be is sympathetic to the people that are suffering under that regime, who are suffering atrocities of human rights. And instead, we see this larger pattern of colleges and universities continuing to glorify socialism. This is something that should concern all of us, because as we know, the students that are there are going to graduate, they're going to join our workforce, they're going to be our coworkers, and they're already the largest voting bloc in America. So we really need to be watching closely this trend of socialism becoming a good thing on college campuses without teaching the downfalls and the dark side of the socialist history, which is millions of people starving. In Venezuela, I believe the average weight loss has been 24 pounds for people, and that's not from dieting. That is from lack of food on the shelves in stores. So students should not be learning such a favorable view towards something that's caused so much pain in our world.
Now, some people would say there's nothing wrong with having speakers share controversial views on campus. So what's the big deal, Emma?
The big deal here is that students are taking this attitude of socialism being a good thing, and they're running with it, and they're taking it with them to the voting booth. As we know, most notably, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez literally ran on a socialist platform, and she is one of the rising stars in Congress today. We also have Ilhan Omar. We have Kamala Harris even running on single-payer health care and on tuition-free college. And these are things that should really concern us, because as a student, it's easy to buy into the idea of free things and helping people when that's the only thing that you hear. But these students are not being taught the dangers of socialism and the dangers of the market being controlled by the government, which is what's happened in Venezuela. And it's really important that students are learning both sides of this. And frankly, on campus today, as we've reported at the Leadership Institute's campus reform, they are only learning the sparkly fun side of socialism, and they're not learning what it actually does, which is hurt people and damage healthy countries.
Well, I was going to ask you, is there any critical thinking going on at Scripps or other college campuses when it comes to socialism? What have you discovered in your research?
Well, to name another example, University of Pittsburgh professor said last year that Venezuela is better off under socialism. So it seems like there is a real lack of critical thinking on the college campus. And that's why people are supposed to go to college, is to learn different ideas and learn how to think critically and logically and figure out what the best ideas for our society are. But instead, unfortunately, they're only learning one-sided points of view. They're learning that socialism is a good thing, capitalism is a bad thing. And as we know, those are very damaging ideas to our country. Capitalism has helped lift people from poverty. The poverty rate has massively declined in the past few decades because of capitalism. And unfortunately, students are being taught that that's a bad thing. And this is so dangerous to our country and also to the rest of the world as these ideas begin to literally take traction when it comes to our elections. Many of the Democratic 2020 primary candidates are running on a socialist platform of free things and government-funded entities. And that's unfortunate to see, but we have to stop it where it's starting, which is the college campus.
And you had mentioned socialist Ilhan Omar, the newly sworn-in Congresswoman. She called Trump's Venezuela policy a coup. Your thoughts?
She did. She went to a public university, North Dakota State University, and she graduated not too long ago in 2011. So it's easy to track the pattern of where this is coming from. She went from university to the halls of Congress within 10 years, which is very impressive for her. But unfortunately, it seems that she's picked up these ideas that socialism is the best way to help our economies and help our people who are struggling and who are working hard. But she's even going as far as to glorify a dictatorship and a murderous regime. So she clearly does not understand the actual effects of socialism. And it's more important to her to stick to her liberal talking points than it is to call a spade and say that Maduro's regime is a massive violation of human rights.
So finally, Emma, what is the danger of advancing socialism and denouncing America and capitalism on our college campuses?
Well, the danger here is that students are going to take these ideas with them to the voting booth, which we've already seen begin to happen. And if we don't stop this now, or at least add in more curriculum that teaches students the benefits of capitalism and of free markets in helping people and growing opportunities for people in healing communities, then we're going to see these ideas only continue to grow and take on more traction. So it's important that we make sure students are getting a well-rounded education and that they're being taught facts rather than idealistic worldviews that oversimplify very dangerous ideas.
Okay, Emma Michelle of Campus Reform, thanks so much for setting us straight today.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Congresswoman Maxine Waters warned you against watching President Trump's State of the Union address. She said she hoped Americans would turn their TVs off because under Trump, the State of the Union has not been good. More fake news, folks. Here's the president Tuesday night, listing some facts proving otherwise.
We have created 5.3 million new jobs and importantly added 600,000 new manufacturing jobs. Wages are rising at the fastest pace in decades. Nearly 5 million Americans have been lifted off food stamps. Unemployment has reached the lowest rate in over half a century. African American, Hispanic American, and Asian American unemployment have all reached their lowest levels ever recorded. We passed a massive tax cut for working families and doubled the child tax credit.
And those were only some of the positive developments for the U.S. economy and our workers. Many other good things are happening. I don't know about you, but I notice many sour faces from the Democrat side of the aisle. Shouldn't all Americans be pleased about our robust economy and some of those record low unemployment numbers? That's a victory for all of us, regardless of your party affiliation. But no applause from Pelosi, Schumer, and the Dems. I guess they only applaud success when it comes from a Democrat. By the way, millions of Americans ignored Maxine Waters' warning and did tune in to watch the State of the Union address. CNN reports 59% of those watching had a very positive reaction to the president's speech. CBS News found 72% approve of Trump's stance on immigration. There were some wonderful, touching moments, too, like when President Trump honored 3 elderly D-Day heroes from World War II. Also, Dachau survivor Joshua Kaufman. He and other Jews were liberated from the concentration camp by one of those American soldiers, Herman Zaitchik. The victory over Nazism occurred 74 years ago, but the president said the country's biggest victories are still to come. He made a plea for unity and compromise. And then he said Congress can choose greatness or gridlock. Let's all pray they choose greatness. Well, that's it from the Global Lane. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Twitter. And until next time, be blessed.